I'm Greg Tepper. That's the extremely noisy Greg Powers. And this is This Week
in Cruton.
Greg Powers is here, but you knew that. Because he's
How could you not hear him?
How could you not hear
This should be our shtick.
the calamity?
No, this should not be a shtick.
Greg Calamity Powers
No,
is
thank
here
you.
from Next Level Athlete. Follow him on Twitter at GPower79. Follow Next Level Athlete, our valued recruiting partner, at Next Level D1. Powers, a lot to get to. First and foremost, how are you?
Great.
Yeah?
Reds won last night. Happy.
Yeah. I turned the Rangers game off in the 8th inning and just presumed they won, so everything went great.
I just wanted to be able to get into our chat and break up a little bit of the basketball talk last night with some baseball.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I drew Shahan off the whole point of me going in there. I went into our Slack chat for people who don't care, which is everybody. I went into our Slack chat during the Dirk Nowitzki thing last night and said, "Oh man, it's pretty clear that Dirk Nowitzki is better than Larry Bird." That is in no way true, and I know it's in no way true. But my idea, I'll be entirely honest, my target was Ishmael.
Yeah.
I wanted to draw Ishmael off sides and say, all right, I want to get him in an argument. But who bid on it? Shahan.
Shahan always bites.
Shahan bit hard.
Shahan is ready to argue about anything.
It was great. Anyway, Dirk's great. He's not Larry Bird, but he's great. Anyway, we're here with Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete for This Week in Recruiting. A number of things to get to. Let's first start down the Houston area. Our prospect on the rise. Hey. Where have I seen this story before? Spring Westfield has an awesome defensive tackle. Nick Booker Brown, a 6'1", 250-pound class 2020 defensive tackle, picked up another offer this week, this one from Colorado. Seems to be catching a little bit of fire so far.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it right there. He's Spring Westfield has a knack for developing great defensive linemen. For whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it's in the water there. Coaching. Give Coach Meekins and Coach Meekins some credit for what they've been able to do.
The Meekinses.
Yep, yes. For what they've been able to do at Spring Westfield. And I think Booker Brown is a guy who will catch a lot of interest this spring evaluation period. He was a top 5 at our Next Level Athlete Camp back in January, had a very dominating performance there, and then he followed that up with an MVP performance at the opening. He was the D-line MVP there in Houston. So a strong offseason for Nick Booker Brown, and he's now collected 2 Power 5 conference offers from Colorado and Rutgers, and has some smaller FBS schools also in tow. Yeah,
he's a guy, obviously, you talk about Ed Oliver, who's going to go very highly in the NFL draft this upcoming this month. Keandre Coburn, of course, is at Texas as well.
Tank Jackson back in the day.
I mean, they just have a knack. It's very odd because, like we think for all we talk about places like Lake Travis, which put out great quarterbacks, or there are a number of places, especially you go down to Fort Bend. Fort Bend ISD puts out a lot of receivers. It seems like there are these pockets of the state, and especially single schools, that put out individual playmakers. But I can't think of another school that consistently puts out excellent defensive linemen.
Every class. It seems like every class, or at least every other class, Spring Westfield is, and not even just defensive linemen, defensive tackles, which is probably the toughest position to grow talent at. I mean, it's hard. Great defensive tackles are hard to find.
Yeah, at least consistently. You go to Gladewater, right? Gladewater had Dalen Mack. But with all due respect to our friends in Bear Country, I don't know if I can think of another time that they put out like a stellar defensive tackle. Nope. They put out other great players, but I can't think of another defensive tackle they put out.
All these guys are active.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not like just big bodies.
Yeah.
They all are active, have high motors, and that's another attribute that's hard to develop within a defensive tackle prospect.
So that is our prospect on the rise. It is Spring Westfield 2020 defensive tackle Nick Booker Brown, 6'1", 250, coming out of the Houston area. Let's go to our commit of the week. This one got a lot of buzz on the social media because a guy who's been on the radar basically since he was a freshman at a high-profile program, South Lake Carroll, R.J. Mickens made the call. He is heading to Clemson. The rich get richer there. And this is the guy that they list him as a cornerback. That's probably where he ends up profiling at the next level, but I know he does a ton all over the field for South Lake Carroll.
Yeah, he was stepped up to be their leading wide receiver this year as well. Can play on both sides of the football. But I definitely like his skill set as he transitions into college in the defensive backfield. He had all the offers. He picked of course, Clemson over an offer from his father, Ray Mickens' alma mater, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame. So you really said it correctly. The rich get richer with Clemson, and they're very selective over which prospects they come and try to mine from Texas. They don't have a lot of or a huge Texas presence necessarily on their roster. They do recruit the state. As a matter of fact, the defensive backs coach, Coach Reed, is one who I see often, throughout the spring travels here. But they don't have to recruit Texas as their main fertile recruiting ground. So I think Mickens is a good culture fit there, and he's also a prospect who they would like to work cerebrally into their defense.
Yeah, it's interesting because Clemson is not, for all the talent that gets exported out of the state of Texas, Clemson has not had a huge footprint here. They've gotten one or two guys. I remember J.C. Chalk from Argyle they grabbed, and a few other guys. But when you look overall at their roster, there's not a ton of Texans. They do their damage on the East Coast. They do their damage in SEC country a lot of times. But here's a guy. It seems like when they come to Texas not to cast a wide net, but rather we've identified one guy in a position of need, and we're going to come and get him. And that seems to be the case here with our team.
And South Lake Carroll seems to be a school that they circle too. They're in South Lake Carroll quite often. They offered at the beginning of the spring evaluation period T.J. McDaniel last class, and have definitely identified some guys at that school. But I think the bigger discussion here with Mickens' commitment is that he didn't go to Texas A&M. There may be some more behind-the-scenes type of stuff to that story. But I think when all these offers first started popping up, everybody just assumed he would be an Aggie.
Sure.
And that didn't happen.
It's interesting. This is a guy who was a 65 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 picks, forced fumble. He also caught 43 passes for 643 yards and 3 touchdowns. As a junior last year, he's going to be doing big things again for the Dragons this year, but he is off to Clemson when he is done with his high school career. Talking with Greg Powers, the next level athlete here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, #TF Today. All right, let's go to our underclassman of the week. It's new blood at a new school. Bridgeland, the newest school. One of the didn't Cy just open 2 new high schools? Did I make that up? Cy Lakes. Yeah, Lakes.
Okay.
Yeah, they open Lakes and then Bridgeland. But Bridgeland is open, and Bryce McMorris is kind of the first big name to come out of this new program in the talent-rich area of Cypress. Picked up an offer this week from SMU. You imagine this won't be the last for this youngster who is class of 2021, which means he'll be playing his junior season this year.
No, he's 5'11", 160. We had him at the showcase in Houston back in January. He looks a little bit bigger. He's a little bit longer than his listed height and weight would suggest. He made our top 10 there among all the top defensive backs that were there, like Jalen Jones, so he was in that grouping. And this is we talk about next level athlete on the show sometimes. We don't usually go in depth, but this is the type of guy that our colleges love to see on tape at the camp. He's a name that was not necessarily on the radar, was able to come into the camp and have a top 10 performance, and that video has now helped him probably secure his first offer and maybe more offers down the line from that, because it gives colleges the chance to evaluate him outside of the evaluation period.
Yeah. And
this is a key thing, I think, for a guy like Bryce McMorris, who he didn't have tremendous stats last year. 29 tackles, broke up 5 passes, or that's what he's credited with. So he's not necessarily going to have the best tape, but that camp evaluation video gives these coaches a chance to see him more in depth.
Well, and by the way, it's Cy Park, not Cy Lake. Cy Lake's been around for a while. But I want to correct my own mistake because
sorry, Simon Mann's all over you.
I know these comments.
He's got you.
I knew the comments were going to.
He's got you.
I knew that didn't sound right. Anyway, but this is I think you're right that for a guy, especially as a defensive back, in a lot of ways, if you're a great defensive back, you probably won't have great film. Right. Because they're avoiding you. They're throwing away from you, and it's harder to make plays when they're throwing the ball. You're playing on the left side, they're throwing to the right side. But here's a guy who's able to step up at a camp and suddenly has this first offer from SMU. You mentioned that TCU is showing some interest. This is and with 2 years still to go in his high school career, you figure this is not going to be the last we hear of Bryce McMorris. And by the way, getting coached by David Raffield, the coach, former A&M Consolidated coach, who knows his way around some prospects as well, knows his way around defensive back.
I was just getting ready to drop out there. Credit to the coaching staff at Bridgeland, too, for having him prepared to step into something like that and have a key performance. You know, they had him keyed up, ready to go, and it showed when he stepped on the field.
We got all this stuff up at TexasFootball.com with Greg Powers from Next Level Athlete, but let's get to our recruit of the week, a guy who maybe gets lost in the wash down there at Fort Bend Marshall. Fort Bend Marshall, of course, is so loaded with talent, but cornerback 2020, Avery Helm, another one of these outstanding athletes down there, Birth of Buffaloes. He made the call, going to the SEC, committed to Florida this week, had offers from seemingly everywhere, and had his pick of the litter, but decides to commit to the Gators.
He was one of those guys who I was super sad not to get a chance to see in the state championship game. He was out with an ACL injury, so he missed that game, but had a really great year before that. And showed enough on tape to really pick up all of the major offers. Had over 30 offers at the time that he committed to Florida. Took unofficial visits to take a closer look at schools like Arizona, Houston, Alabama, and LSU before ultimately picking UF. But it was a very busy week for commitments in the state of Texas. I mean, outside of the two that we featured here, Avery Helm going to Florida, R.J. Mickens going to Clemson, both in that ACC-SEC footprint. We had guys like, Christian Lee at Friendswood committed to North Texas this week. Jason Curl from Fort Worth Nolan Catholic committed to North Texas this week. And UTSA picked up a commitment from Atascocita. Yes, another Atascocita offensive lineman, and Cyrus Simon, who committed to the Roadrunners. And then a big one, I think, is Arkansas reeled in Austin Westlake wide receiver Mason Mangum, who is a bit of a fan favorite and a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up. You talk about ties, right? Yep. Here's Chad Morris going back to the well. We've talked. I've been on radio shows and talked about how he has these ties to East Texas because he's an Edgewood guy. He's coaching East Texas. He's a guy, and obviously with Arkansas being there. But let's not forget that. I mean, he coached down there at Lake Travis, and he's got those ties to that area that he can walk into any one of those locker rooms anytime he wants. He continues to do work. Mason Mangum, I think, is an excellent pickup there from Westlake. I think you go to talk to folks down there at the Shaps, they'll rave and rave about the way that this guy plays. And you're right, a fan favorite down there for the Shaps.
And he had a huge testing weekend at the opening in Houston. I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but it was a great 40 time, tremendous shuttle, and that kind of erased the sleeper moniker from being next to his name, and he kind of exploded onto the recruiting radar, picked up his offer from Arkansas. But I'd like to give some credit to Arkansas, Baylor, SMU. When I look at these top prospects offer lists, by and large, one of those three programs was the first school to jump on board, and that means they're doing a tremendous job at evaluating these early. Texas high school football prospects.
Yeah, they're on it early, and especially when you talk about these guys, sometimes, especially if they're big-name prospects or they end up being big-name prospects, sometimes the advantage you can have if you are in Arkansas, which went 2-10 last year, and obviously can't go in there and recruit on wins, but being the first there and saying, hey, we were the first one to take that chance on you, to believe in you.
Right.
We want to make sure, sometimes you hear from recruits all the time, they were with me from the beginning. And I think in a lot of ways, though, you're exactly right, SMU, Baylor, and Arkansas have been those guys that have gotten there early on a lot of these guys.
Gives those guys a chance to dream about being in that jersey when you're first.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's second comes second, but for whatever length of amount of time that is that you're first, those guys are thinking, can I see myself in the green? Can I see myself in the blue and red? You know what I mean? So that just gives you a chance to supplant yourself into these prospects' minds.
Greg Powers, the Next Level Athlete, with us, and we do have a bit of an announcement, Maximus. I know that you and Powers, I've been very much not involved in this.
That's all right.
There is
plenty.
We've got new stuff coming to the site, specifically a new recruiting site at TexasFootball.com. Going to have a lot of great information there, not just for everybody, but also specifically for insiders. A lot of great stuff for insiders. We've kind of been teasing it about becoming a Dave Campbell's Texas Football Insider, the great recruiting stuff that's coming. This is going to be our recruiting hub. It's TexasFootball.com/recruiting is where it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
It's launching next week. But we're doing some of the things that you've come to love from a lot of these great recruiting sites. We're going to have rankings. We're going to have things like that. But I'm excited about the things that we're doing that are different and the things that we're going to bring from the Next Level Athlete perspective that with you guys' help, we're going to have these in-depth breakdowns of these guys' game that I just don't think you can get everywhere.
Well, also something to take into account is what a lot of other sites that don't have a partnership with an NCAA certified scouting service.
Yes.
I mean, college coaches rely on this information.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you an extra layer of, just being bona fide
being
in
on
that
the inside.
regard. You know what I'm being on the inside, taking you kind of behind the scenes and giving you a peek or removing the veil a little bit to see what it's like behind the scenes. And I think that's pretty cool, and not a lot of recruiting services are going to be able to offer that.
And we're gonna have our own rankings up. We're going to be revealing, I believe, starting next week, our first 5 stars for the class of 2020. And it's exciting. We're going to have player pages for a lot of these guys. We're going to have, I really love the look of it. And one of the things I think is really interesting is that we're going to be playing up a lot of what these guys do well, the skill sets, and saying, I know Max has been working on these badges that guys are going to have, that if you are an outstanding route runner, we want to make sure we tell people, hey, this guy may not be a burner, but he's going to beat you to the corner every single time.
What's your favorite badge moniker?
Oh,
Max.
Yeah, Max, you only built 30 of them, right?
The best one is what the heck? It's the
Bulldogger was one that
Bulldogger
really
was good. If you're a good tackler, we called you a Bulldogger. We want to find an old rodeo term for something like that. I'm trying to remember. My favorite one is the one with the skull and the fighter helmet. I can't remember what it is, though, off the top of my head. I have to look at it again.
There's a lot of fun that's coming too with this recruiting portal. We're trying to have fun with it. It's not necessarily taking ourselves so seriously as maybe some others may be doing it in the field. How I would describe what's coming for recruiting at DCTF is a way to make it fun, but also enjoyable for Texas high school football fans, players, coaches, and parents. To be able to enjoy the recruiting side of what we're bringing to the table. And with the archived magazine stuff that we had this week, and then combined with the recruiting stuff that's going to be launching next week, I don't think you're going to find a better subscription value out there. So now's the time to sign up, guys. April's the key month.
April's the key month.
It's by the way, I looked it up. It's Deadly Returner.
Deadly Returner.
Yeah. Anyone who's a Deadly Returner, their icon is a skull and crossbones wearing a fighter pilot helmet, which is definitely my favorite one.
It's going to be fun. TexasFootball.com/recruiting. It's launching next week in partnership with our friends at Next Level Athlete, and Greg Powers has done a lot of the heavy lifting there. It's going to be a lot of fun, so we appreciate you stopping by, and we'll do this again next week.
Let's do it.